I call to order the May 22nd, 2024 Area Board of Zoning Appeals of Tippecanoe County meeting. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Steve Clevenger.
Present.
Gary Schroeder.
Present.
Tim Vanderplatz.
Present.
Robert Novak.
Present.
Brad Halberg.
Present.
Ed Butz.
Present.
Rabita Rajanikar.
Present.
Quorum present.
Thank you. I'll take the approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the April 24th, 2024 ABZA public hearing as submitted.
Now a second.
Have a motion, a second. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. New business.
Due to early voting here in the building for the November general election, the October 23rd BZA meeting will be held at the City Hall Council chambers. I thought I would start now and remind everybody once a month until we hit that time.
Okay.
Also, we are still needing one form for BZA 2157 Appalachia Land Trust. So if anybody is here from BZA 2157, please come to the planner's desk as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take the public hearing motion, please.
I move that there be incorporated into the public hearing portion of each application to be heard this evening and to become part of the evidence at such hearing, the Unified Zoning Ordinance, the Unified Subdivision Ordinance, the Comprehensive Plan, the bylaws of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, the application and all documents filed herewith, the staff report and recommendation of the applications to be heard this evening, and responses from the checkpoint agencies.
Now a second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. I would like to describe our meeting procedures for tonight. Each vote will be heard following a motion and a second from the board. We'll ask staff to report on its findings. Following the staff report, we'll ask the petitioner to present his or her case, after which anyone wishing to support the petitioner's request for a variance or special exception will be asked to come forward. After hearing from the petitioner and those speaking on his or her behalf, we will ask those speaking against the petition to present their arguments. The petitioner will then be allowed to rebut arguments raised by those in opposition to his or her petition. Following the rebuttal, the board may wish to ask questions of the petitioner, supporters, and opponents of the petition, or of the staff. The staff will have the opportunity at this time to make any necessary clarifying comments. We will then vote by use of a prescribed ballot. 4 votes are necessary to make any decision. The absence of 4 votes, either for or against the petition, is automatically continued to the next meeting. Please observe the following guidelines for the sake of time and fairness to all. State your name and address for the record before you speak. Limit your remarks to 5 minutes or less. Do not repeat arguments that have been brought up by others. Remember that all visual aids used to support your arguments will remain the property of the board. Cell phones must be turned off while the meeting is in session. Please step out of the room before using your cell phone. And we do have a sign-in sheet on the planner's desk. If you speak in favor or opposition or not the petitioner, we ask that you sign after you speak. I would like to ask again, and I'll ask again later, if there's anybody here from BZA 2157 Appalachia Land Trust. There is some missing paperwork that needs to be turned in. Here she is. With that in mind, we'll go ahead and hear the first case.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2153 Albert and Melanie Looper. The petitioners and owners are requesting a special exception to allow a transient guest house operating 24 hours per day, 7 days per week for a maximum of 6 guests in an R1U zone. The property is located at 617 Robinson Street in West Lafayette, Wabash 17, Southwest 23-4, with conditions and commitments.
Now a second.
Thank you, and we'll hear from staff, please.
Evening, everybody. Nathan McBurnett, APC staff. We have got a property here on Robinson Street. It's a single-family home. It's located within the historic Connolly and Madden's Addition subdivision, platted in 1893, one of the city's oldest subdivisions. All properties, as you can see from the map, are all zoned R1U. They have been ever since they were platted and used as single-family homes. The site is served by Robinson Street and has a city bus route, 1B Salisbury, a block away. And with that, the petitioners have proposed a few commitments. I'll go ahead and mention. The special exception is proposed with quiet hours of 10 p.m. or 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. No parties or overnight guests beyond those registered at the time of the reservation. And then the special exception shall cease for the property if ownership of property changes from the Loper family or an LLC with majority ownership of the Loper family. Additional commitments include occupancy shall be limited to 6 guests with no more than 3 unrelated guests at any given time, and the dwelling may only be reserved for a single booking at any given time. I'm going to go ahead and read the staff comments word for word because they're pretty lengthy, and I just want to make sure everything is clear. If approved, the special exception would allow up to 6 guests 24 hours per day, 7 days of the week. Petitioner has noted that there will be no outdoor lighting added to the existing home, which is pictured here. Here's the site plan. Beautiful, charming home here. You can see the side alley there. Bookings will be limited to a 2-night minimum. Proposed quiet hours are 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., as I already mentioned, which will be enforced using a sound detector that will note and report any noise in excess of 70 dP. I'm not sure what that stands for. The zoning ordinance prohibits transient guest houses from changing the outside appearance of a dwelling and also does not permit any exterior signage. As defined by the UZO, this use does not require the unit to be owner-occupied. A permit to operate the transient guest house must be obtained from the administrative officer, who is the West Lafayette Building Commissioner. Staff is aware that a growing number of West Lafayette residents are concerned with the proliferation of transient guest houses, particularly within the West Lafayette Community School Corporation, which has the smallest area of any school corporation within the county. Boosters for West Lafayette schools, the City of West Lafayette, and the school corporation itself naturally do not want to see neighborhood houses removed from the possibility of ever having school-aged children. From the first special exception, staff reports for transient guest houses in 2017, staff raised the concern that too many short-term rentals could potentially erode the fabric of a residential neighborhood. The unknown factor was the limit. 1 or 2 transient guest houses in a neighborhood seems fine, but what about 5, 10? Staff still does not know how many is too many in a neighborhood. This growing controversy among residents has served as a prime motivator for the City of West Lafayette's Commission Housing Analysis Report, which was released earlier this year. The findings of the study reveal that West Lafayette is experiencing a shortfall of roughly 5,000 housing units, short of establishing a causal relationship between transient guest rentals and this housing crunch. The report calls attention to the adverse effects short-term rentals are having on the city's housing stock and recommends to preserve existing single-family homes as entry-level ownership options. These adverse effects mainly focus on affordability and the availability of housing stock. In response, the West Lafayette City Council has passed a resolution directing APC staff to craft a UZO amendment limiting transient guest rentals within single-family zones in order to preserve the city's existing housing stock. While this proposed amendment is not codified, it is worth noting that the property in question is zoned R1U. If this amendment is adopted, the R1U zone will no longer permit transient guest houses, and thus a rezone petition will be required for any future request. It is also worth noting that the City of West Lafayette, and Greater Lafayette for that matter, do not exist within a policy vacuum. The development of transient guest houses has escalated across the country in metropolitan areas with similar size, local economy, and demographic composition to our own. In response, some of these communities, including our regional neighbor, Ann Arbor, Michigan, have amended their zoning ordinances to limit transient guest houses in residential zones as a means of preserving existing housing stock for long-term housing. Just like our community, these localities have been experiencing their own housing crises, some of them for comparatively longer periods of time. Lastly, staff has voiced concern during the May APC Ordinance Committee that the special exception tests are not well suited for a use of this type. The scale and nature of transient guest houses make them unique among business enterprises, as they have a proportionally insignificant effect on traffic generation, noise production, and outdoor lighting compared to other, more conventional businesses. This is by design. They're intended to be of similar appearance and impact to single-family homes. For this reason, staff opinions on these cases in the past have been a matter of procedure rather than analysis, because the special exception tests don't allow considerations that may be more appropriate for a use of this kind. In light of West Lafayette's 2024 Housing Analysis Report, staff now has data that indicates short-term full house rental properties are having a material effect on the general welfare of the West Lafayette community. Staff interprets the report's findings as a recommendation to prioritize the preservation of existing single-family housing stock, specifically for the purpose of long-term housing, over any alternative use. While this request meets most of the ballot items, staff feels that referencing test number 3 here, granting the special exception will subvert the general purposes served by the ordinance. Based on data presented in the new housing study, short-term rentals negatively impact single-family residential neighborhoods by contributing to rising housing costs that can impose a prohibitive financial burden and exclusionary effect on current and future long-term residents in need of housing. Short-term rentals also remove housing stock from the long-term residential housing market, contributing directly to the city's housing shortfall while posing an additional barrier to current and future residents in need of housing. These factors together pose an adverse effect on the welfare of the West Lafayette community. And it's because of test number 3 that staff recommends denial for this petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Petitioner or his or her representative?
Petitioner, I'll self-represent. First of all, thanks to John and Nathan for the help along the way. I'm new to this and did not quite expect quite the excitement that I'm getting for this opportunity. So, and thanks to the board for being present. So, quick question for the audience.
Please direct your, everything has to come forward the board,
okay.
not the audience.
I'm not allowed to ask the audience a question?
They
Procedurally?
cannot respond.
Oh, can they move their bodies? Okay, I'll ask you then. I'll ask the 7 of you here. Have any of you ever taken the opportunity to rent a house or an apartment for less than 30 days on a vacation? And perhaps rhetorical, because I don't think any of you actually probably feel comfortable raising your hands about that. But that's one of the advantages that these short-term rentals provide, is a family opportunity to kind of live in the city. So let me give you, I'll step back a little bit. Let me give you a little bit of background about myself. My wife and I, I'm Albert Loper, this is Melanie Loper. Married 32 years, 5 grown children. Our youngest child attends Purdue and just completed his freshman year. I attended Purdue. I actually graduated from Harrison High School in 1987, went to Purdue, graduated in 92. And because of being in high tech, I moved to Austin, Texas, where there is a lot of high tech opportunity. My father and brother live in Carmel. I'm very familiar with the area. My family lived here through about 2006 before they moved to Carmel. So very familiar with the area. In the last, actually in between October of 22 to February of 24, I visited the area 4 times. 3 of those times I stayed in short-term rentals. One of them was on Salem Drive, one of them on DeHart, one of them just west of the airport. In each of those cases, I noticed 1, the property maintenance was on par or greater than the median or mean in the area. 2, everything was taken into account, taken care of. And 3, I was able to visit the place for an extended period of time with either with my wife and I, or with my wife, myself, and 3 of our children as we were delivering our son to Purdue for early start last year. We would not have had the opportunity to experience Lafayette and West Lafayette in a way I hadn't in over 15 years, because we got to sit there and enjoy it as opposed to being crammed in a hotel room off of 26 and 52. The other challenge is that, as the group here has mentioned, there's a housing problem in this area, and so as a consequence, if I want to come visit my son on any particular weekend, I either have to choose to get a hotel 30 miles away or pay usurious fees for a hotel in any city, much less a city of the size of Lafayette and West Lafayette. So what we did is we decided to take a leap here, and we said, okay, we're going to buy a house in the area to enable us to visit. We're going to live there 3 to 4 months out of the year. My profession and my wife's situation, now that we have no kids at home, allows us to work remote and things like that. So I'll live in the house 3 to 4 months a year, provide opportunity for my children to come visit their brother on a whim, and then on top of it, we'll let the others have the same opportunity that we had in other houses to say, okay, let's experience West Lafayette. I mean, West Lafayette is a wonderful place to live. The West Lafayette areas are wonderful places to live, but I don't think people get to experience them the same way if they just drop in for 2 days and get out. Since we've purchased it in February of '24, we've done 100% exterior repair and update. And you can see in the picture there, I have very recent pictures because they've drawn some cabling lines there for some additional work we're planning on doing. We did a new roof, new gutters, new soffit, new fascia, and new paint. And in fact, we had to go before the historical board in West Lafayette to get this approved. And we were thanked by each of them for actually putting money into the community and fixing up the houses, and fixing up the house. And so that's, one, we wanted to live in a place that didn't leak and didn't have any problems like that. And so we ended up fixing it that way. The other piece I'd point out is we actually weren't the original accepted offer. However, the first offer decided they did not want to deal with the flashing, the roof, all that different types of stuff, and so we had the opportunity to go in there. Why are we at this meeting? You know, clearly we bought the property. We want to use it as a short-term rental on occasion. We don't want this to be, I think a lot of the fears that I'm hearing are party house, people parking on the road, crazy hours and things like that. Our intent is to treat it and require people who visit to treat it as their own house and as our house. And so we have a co-host that we've met and is a friend of ours now, who also manages a property in the area. And when the petition that was handed around to the group here, turns out they delivered a petition to that house also. So it had operated as a member of the community without. We didn't get a petition signed, by the way. In our neighborhood, our neighbors did. So there are ways to operate these homes in the area that have zero impact on the community. And then last, our proposal we've already talked about. This is an occasional short-term rental. My objective is not to drop this in here, get out of town, and just say, okay, just count my money. That's not the intent. The intent is to make it available for people that have similar challenges to what we did, who can't visit their children at Purdue, have larger families, and being able to stay in a place for 2 to 3 days near walking distance to campus would provide that benefit for them. It's situated in a fashion where it's 2 floors plus a basement. We'd have 2 configurations. One is for 6 guests, where we'd make the top floor available. There's other options where we have it available for 4 guests, just the bottom floor available because we have the ability to lock off a door that goes to the attic. No parties. We'd have exterior cameras to make sure that there's nobody violating those rules. In fact, 2 of our neighbors are here. One of them who will let us know if there's something going wrong or if he hears something. And like I said, like the board member already said, not board member, excuse me, the advisor already said, is that quiet hours from 10 to 8, excuse me, we'll have sound monitors, and the special exception will end when we either sell the house to somebody that's not a family member, and so that it moves on. So I appreciate the opportunity to present to you here. I understand the sensitivities in the community from this. At the same time, I think my situation is significantly different than most of what people are trying to do with short-term rentals. In that I'm planning on using it myself as property for 3 to 4 months minimum out of the year, and enable my family to visit. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Hello, my name's Chris Jewell, and I live at 607 Robinson Street, which is the house directly south of this one. To put it briefly, I'm not against this at all. There's no issues with the Airbnb. I mean, they even brought up that there's a short-term rental on D Hart that I've lived on at the address since 2017 and never knew existed. I think that the argument for completing or making it an issue for housing in the area, I think we're looking at the wrong problem. I think it's, in the years that I've lived there since 2017, all the families who moved out, it's been long-term rentals for college students who moved in. I don't have single families a block in either direction of my house. So I think we're looking at the wrong problem here. Essentially, I'm of the opinion, we talked about maintenance of the property and keeping it up. The house next door in the next picture over has grass that's about 8 inches tall, and it's a rental. So, I mean, I think that some of the worries and problems here are kind of unfounded, and at the end of the day, they own the property. As long as they're jumping through their hoops and not doing anything they shouldn't be, they should be able to do what they want with it. That's it for me.
Thank you. Sir, if you could sign in. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Hi, everyone. My name is Savannah Jewell, and I live at 607 Robinson with that handsome fella over there. We are the neighbors to the direct south of Al and Melanie, and they have been so lovely since they moved in. We moved into our property in 2017, as my husband said. We have been living there for 7 years now. And I got to tell you, since we moved in, almost every single house around us does not have a family to their name. And so we were thrilled when they moved in with the intent of enjoying campus, enjoying the proximity, and being able to enjoy all that West Lafayette has to offer. When we talk about this degradation of the fabric of the new Chauncey neighborhood, it's degraded. It has giant moth holes in that fabric. And I do not see this as an additional moth hole. This is somebody who is coming to live in our community, who wants to enjoy our community, and wants to open their homes to other people who intend to enjoy the community in a respectful fashion. I see absolutely no benefit to this house sitting empty for half a year because they were denied their request to allow other people to enjoy their home. So that is my statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Hello, my name is Colin Kinkiri. I live at 612 Robinson Street, and I'm a student at Purdue. I recently graduated from Purdue, and I can tell you the street around us, there aren't a lot of families living in it. And like everybody's mentioning, houses on the street are actually degrading, like eventually over time, because there isn't a lot of improvements going into it. I believe that the biggest issue is just housing around the area. Most of my classmates, they can't even actually live, like they can't even find places to live. And after speaking with Al, meeting them over the weekend, it's clear that their intention is not to rent to students. I think that creates most of the party problems that I faced with Airbnbs in my time as well. So I believe that it's a good idea to just bring it in, and it's all about people's opinion on the street. Whatever they think is best should be considered, but it's, in my opinion, I don't think it is a bad plan. They keep the house pretty clean. I mean, that picture looks much nicer than most of the houses in the area, and I believe that they should go through with it. That is my statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you sign in, please? Yes. Speaking in favor. If not, speaking in opposition.
I guess I'll go first. Hello, my name's Dave Kusick. I live at 807 Elmwood Drive, West Lafayette, and we do have an Airbnb right across the street from us. My whole point has always been in addressing this group is the availability of single-family homes and the impact on the school district. You've been given the McGibbon report, which was done by a consultant to evaluate the future student population in our district, and that showed that the student population would be steady and on a slight decline. The main point that the McGibbon report did not take into consideration was transient homes being lost, or transient homes taking single-family homes away from our neighborhood. That's documented, and you can see that. Recently, the superintendent of the school district I actually went through, and I meant to print this out, and I didn't, but it's a chart of the existing student population going back, and then what's predicted to happen just in the near future. Some of his bullet points are based on the, thank you, based on the recent, am I going to steal your thunder? Based on a recent demographic report, enrollment trends should stay relatively steady moving forward, assuming all things constant within the community. A constant can be economy, housing, rental housing, major employers, etc. The demographer did not factor in the possible continued trend of residential homes being converted to transitional housing. His assumptions are based on a family home continuing as a family home as part of the available housing stock typically anticipated. If the trend were to continue regarding loss of family-owned homes, then our enrollment would reasonably be expected to decline. This decline in enrollment would cause us to rely more heavily on the transfer process. Currently, there's about 110 to 115 transfer students coming into the West Lafayette School District. And, that cannot always be guaranteed. I don't understand all the factors on that one, but it's not a guarantee. We have a community that values education and has continued to support programming through the referendum funds since 2010. There is a balance that should be considered when accepting transfers from out of the district, and failure to balance this can lead the community choosing not to support a referendum in the future, which can lead to the loss of funds to the determinant of what our community can offer regarding college education programming and competitive teacher salaries. So there's good data and there's good documentation that the loss of single-family homes to transient houses is and will affect our school district, okay? It's that simple. If the school district wasn't landlocked, then there might be some other options, but it's landlocked. And the course of action that's being suggested, and I applaud those that gave staff new recommendations to consider on evaluating a transient request, because I think they've recognized all of the issues associated with the impact of the transient housing. One other thing, and neighborhoods need neighbors. The bottom line behind neighborhoods needing neighbors is neighbors will tend to respect other neighbors. If a neighbor is going to do something that's going to hurt his neighbors, he's probably going to choose, she's probably going to choose not to do that. It's just pure morality. It's how you approach life. And if you don't have neighbors, then you're going to run into those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition. Please keep coming forward if you wish to speak.
Zachary Bale, 124 Connolly Street, just north of the residence in question, across from an Airbnb, down the street from some other Airbnbs. Thank you for this opportunity. We're here again, hearing some special exceptions to allow house hotels and motels in the residential districts in the city of West Lafayette. And for the record, I will read the petition where we had, for this one, 127 signed in opposition. We, the undersigned, are opposed to allowing a transient guest house at 617 Robinson Street in West Lafayette. We find, as others have as well, the proposed special exception to deviate from existing zoning rules, and allowing a transient guest house at this location in West Lafayette will materially and permanently injure the other property and its uses in the same zoning district and vicinity, along with subverting the R1U purposes of the Unified Zoning Ordinance. The City Council followed the public's leadership and recently passed a resolution to amend the Unified Zoning Ordinance to ban transient guest houses in residential zones in West Lafayette, and is awaiting to be heard at the June APC meeting. The APC staff concurs with the public on their position that transient guest houses negatively impact neighborhoods, which is based on the empirical data gathered by the city's housing report. Our request to deny the special exception is supported by the community's expressed concerns regarding safety, traffic, noise, lighting, and the current and future uses of R1U zone properties in the neighborhood. To prevent the further erosion of our neighborhoods and to maintain their integrity as long-term housing for individuals and families, voting against the special exception is reasonable and justified. And so now that we have anecdotal evidence of months after months after months, and we also have some empirical data in that housing report, there's some differences between now and previous hearings. We've seen the city of West Lafayette, their city council finally had the courage, especially Councilors Belisario and Leverance, along with Mayor Easter, who sponsored the ordinance, to approve unanimously 9-0 a resolution to amend the UZO forbidding the transient guest houses in residential zones and bringing the West Lafayette Community's neighborhood degradation to an end. This idea was so popular that at the last APC Ordinance Committee meeting, which I also attended, the city of Lafayette and Tippecanoe were also in favor of such a measure because they viewed that if West Lafayette would now not allow their neighborhoods to be destroyed by transient guest houses, their communities would be hit even harder than they already have, and wanted to protect their own neighborhoods. So we also have, for the first time, the APC staff's acknowledgement in the report that special exception tests are not well suited for this type. And they refer to the recent West Lafayette housing study released earlier this year, which stated that West Lafayette is experiencing a shortfall of roughly 5,000 houses, as we heard. And the report calls attention to the adverse effects of short-term rentals are having on the city's housing stock and recommends to preserving existing single-family homes as entry-level ownership options. This was never about just one house, one street, one neighborhood, one school, but an entire county of interconnected and dependent communities. And again, because the simple truth, both Lafayette and Tippecanoe have also requested their jurisdictions be saved from this. And, as aptly put by the APC staff, which is something the public has been saying all along, granting the special exception will subvert the general purposes served by the UZO. Short-term rentals negatively impact single-family residential neighborhoods by contributing to the rising housing costs that can impose a prohibitive financial burden and exclusionary effect on the current and future long-term residents in need of housing. We're not approving these special exceptions based on the character. I had the pleasure of chatting with Al, very nice man, but we're not looking at Al, we're looking at what the question is. We're not looking at the unenforceable intent, occupying a home for a third of the year. We're looking at the unified zoning ordinance and the question in regards to that. As we've heard from the public, the city of West Lafayette and APC's own staff, granting the special exception will subvert the general purposes served by the UZO. I look forward to the comments by the other elected and appointed officials here tonight, and for these reasons and more, denying the special exception is reasonable and justified. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Stein. I live at 1721 Woodland Avenue, West Lafayette. And I don't live in New Chauncey, but I do live in that Purdue-ish area that's been kind of vulnerable to these short-term transient rentals and am impacted by the precedent it would set, because each time we approve one of these, it encourages others, especially out-of-town investors, saying, oh, I can go to West Lafayette and buy a home and take it off the market for something that a family could be using. And it's especially concerning because maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but it looks like homes might finally be coming up for sale, and I hate to see each one that comes up get scooped up for something other than a family. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Hello, my name is David Taylor. I live at 425 Littleton Street, a 3 to 5 minute walk just south of the property in question on Robinson. The report that was read to us mentions a few things which I won't repeat, but I will say that traffic and transportation. So I have lived, and my wife and my family, 2 of our children born here in the Lafayette area, I have lived in West Lafayette since a very cold 10 below 0 day, January 1, 1979. And we bought our first home that spring, corner of Vine and Sylvia Street, and years later bought a home on Littleton Street. And so impact on neighborhood, what what might this type of property use have on a neighborhood? Well, I give you the example of rental properties' impact on neighborhoods. And the Purdue recent graduate who spoke in favor said that the homes in his neighborhood were in decline, but they were also rentals, not single-family owned. That's precisely what I've seen for 4+ decades. The rentals get spiffed up by the new owner, they go into rental production, and downhill after that. And you can drive around, you can identify by sight appearance only which homes in New Chauncey on certain streets are rentals, because that's what rental use does to the physical facility. It's damaging. That's a negative impact. The rental market, because you can charge pretty much what you want to a student, oh, by the way, we own the house next to us and we do rent it. It's registered with the West Lafayette Development Office, Housing Manager. I know what it is to deal with going through tenants wishing to rent your property. And the petitioner says they will not rent to students. I think they want to think seriously about that, because that is discrimination. And we have, I think, federal and state rules about discriminating about tenancy in a rental property. And so now, were this to be approved, that's one negative I don't think has been thought of. So back to my spiel about rental properties going downhill over time. Indeed, that's my observation. Neighborhoods need neighbors, and I just freshly saw the shirts behind me that say that. Neighbors are the people, you may not know their name because they only have lived there for 6 months, but yet they're your neighbors. You can go next door and say, I need help doing this, or my child's ill, could you go to the drugstore and get this? That's what neighbors are. I'm not sure any of us wish to lose the comfort of New Chauncey neighborhood or West Lafayette. Our pleasure in life here that we would like to share as well has a lot to do with trust in the neighborhood. You feel safe. You can ask a stranger anything you like. You can get help. The impact on parking. So every fall, we get 50,000 fresh visitors to our town who will, a few of them will stay around to become students or new faculty, postdocs, staff. But those newcomers snarl the traffic to beat the band. Not just move-in weeks, but because they're unfamiliar with how to get from here to there. And so you find newcomers doing potentially illegal things like U-turns, in the middle of the street, which leads to, I want to mention that just up the street at DeHart and Robinson, there was a fatal accident, one of the few, but it took that fatality and neighborhood pressure to get that Robinson Street posted and surveilled at 25 miles an hour. I speak in support of the, I can't read what it says, but.
5 minutes is up, sir. Your 5 minutes is up.
Okay, so in conclusion, I oppose this rezoning. I think we would be better to try to permanently occupy housing stock with not just families, but working people, whatever it may be, but families would certainly help our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening. My name is Antoinette Sheridan. I live at 825 North Salisbury Street. And I appreciate all of the data that's been presented. I'm going to give you a little bit more of the emotional viewpoint. When my children and I moved into the property at 825 North Salisbury Street about 25 years ago, New Chauncey Neighborhood Association was just getting started purchasing homes, renovating homes, and selling them to families. 25 years ago, there were no families around where I lived. My children and I had to go to University Farms to trick or treat because there were no lights on the porches, no pumpkins. Now I get about 25 or 30 kids, some years even more, trick or treating, which means that the intent of the New Chauncey Neighborhood Association worked. They were able to move landlords out, move families in. I appreciated the analogy an earlier speaker gave about the moth holes in the fabric of our community. I feel that. You can really feel the difference in walking around and knowing that this house is going to out-of-state property owner and it's going to be rented to students. So just trying to hang on to what New Chauncey Neighborhood Association was able to accomplish to bring families into the neighborhood, I would be opposed to more properties going into rentals. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening. I am Erin Aster, Mayor of the City of West Lafayette. I have a couple of things this evening. You have heard a lot of other information. There's plenty of other data, and I'm sure APC staff has that and would be happy to share it. But I do have a couple of things I want to say tonight. One, I do want to genuinely thank these property owners who have purchased these properties with the intent to run a legitimate business and who have invested a lot of money in them. We do take that seriously, and we are grateful for that. The issue today, unfortunately, isn't about that. It's about access. Right now, the City of West Lafayette, we have a handful of transient guest houses, or rentals, I should say, and all of those within our community, 75% of those are single-family homes. So that's a pretty significant percentage. And this restriction that we are pursuing through APC would not restrict all transient guest housing in the community, obviously, but we're very, very focused on those single-family houses. Through our regional Ready Grant Fund, we discovered that Tippecanoe County is very, very short in housing to the tune of tens of thousands of units of housing. And out of curiosity, we were really wondering what West Lafayette looks like. So as we look at West Lafayette as a whole, we probably are deficient by 6,000 units, according to this report, just shy of that actually. If we go even further and just take the assumptions from the original Ready grant-funded housing study within our region, and we look at the amount that we need to just kind of catch up within our community, we would need to build 400 new housing units a year. That's a lot of housing. It can be all types of housing, but right now we are very limited in our capacity to build single-family housing. We are also extremely limited in the capacity to build single-family housing in the West Lafayette Community School District Corporation boundaries. There truly is not a lot of space where this can happen, and it's not a matter of us just being able to build more. We don't have that ability within most of the community, with the exception of some very, very specific pockets. And even if we were to build, we had 32 new single-family housing starts last year for an average of $585,000. The property in question that we're discussing immediately sold for $402,000. I happen to live around the corner from this property. I walk my dog by it almost every day. And my house, I bought it for nothing near that. Right now, West Lafayette is becoming not just unaffordable for many people, but unattainable. because they can't compete trying to buy a house that's available as a commercial property to live in the community that they would like to live in, and to purchase those houses. We have plenty of anecdotal stories about being outbid consistently for these houses, and it's a problem across the board as we consider what a community looks like that continues to deal with rental housing issues, continues to deal with transient guest housing issues, and tries to attract residents to our community who, if they cannot find the house they're looking for, they won't live here. They will go somewhere else and just commute here. And we would prefer that they live here and they continue to create the kind of community that each of us wants to live in. And I would guess many of you have the opportunity to live in a neighborhood like that. And that is really what our neighbors are asking for today, is to maintain that sense of community that they have and make it still accessible to the people who would like to live in these houses on a full-term basis. So I appreciate all of you hearing from us and our residents, and I appreciate your time this evening. And I would also like to thank the APC's staffs for their report, and also taking on additional data as we continue to really understand the housing context within our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm Rich Hogan. You've heard, you've seen, I've sent you things, hopefully you've read them. So I'll answer questions if you have questions about the housing market or how things work. I mostly just wanted to thank the staff for their due diligence. I know they waded through a lot of information to come to the position that we've been pushing for some time now. So it's nice to have them on board. We hope that you're going to be on board too. Then we can all go back to our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Did I take your place?
You go first.
Okay, sorry. All right. My name is Cheryl Kirkpatrick. I live at 801 Carrollton Boulevard in West Lafayette, 47906. First of all, I, yes, do want to thank you. 1,000% kudos. Sounds like you're getting into agreement with us. And also for you listening to us. And it seems that we have a possibility of turning things around. All of the things that these people have said are true. The guy behind me that spoke that owns the house, he seems like a nice guy. I don't know him personally, but after listening to him and thinking that he was going to have a problem finding some place to stay if he wants to come visit his son, I would say, guess what? I have 2 paneled rooms in my downstairs with a bathtub and shower, toilet and sink, which has been remodeled, and you can come and stay with me and my dogs, and I'm not even going to charge you very much money. And if you want your kid to come and be there, there's enough sleeping for 2. But that's me personally. Now, the bottom line is not about rentals with students. Excuse my language, damnation. There's not a thing I can do about that. I would like to. I would like to go to Purdue and sue them for giving all these students entrance in here and then expecting West Lafayette to house them for the last, what, 20, 30, 40 years? So that all those houses down in the south of West Lafayette are now rentals, and they keep moving closer and closer and closer and closer. Now that they're at Meridian, now they want to move into Carrollton, my street, and keep going. And the bottom line is just as the man before me said, and Dave Cusick said, we aren't here to consider any reason to have an Airbnb in West Lafayette School District, period. Why? Because remember, I've been here since 45. And when my parents came here in probably about 41 or 2, there were 5,000 people in West Lafayette, as Mother said. And it's amazing when you look at where I live. I'm in a house that was built in 51, and I was born in 45, and I played down in that valley before it was even a street. There was no woodland. Now, who are all the people that were living in my neighborhood now? My friend Mary Jo Stryker and I could probably tell you who all the people were that lived in those houses around us back in the 50s. Well, actually, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, we can go up. And I thought about this and decided, you all know what the British were talking about when they said the jewel in the crown. Well, guess what? West Lafayette School District is the jewel in the crown. It is not Purdue. Purdue is not the jewel in the crown, never was the jewel in the crown. It's the school district. Why? Because you look around us and tell me, why did all the doctors who operated and had offices lived in West Lafayette and worked in Lafayette? Why were the dentists and oral surgeons living in West Lafayette and worked in Lafayette? Why did the lawyers all live in West Lafayette and had offices in Lafayette? Because they wanted their kids to go to the West Lafayette school system, which is the jewel in the crown. And what do you want to do by making Airbnbs and rentals? You are going to eventually destroy the jewel in the crown that has been there since the beginning of the school system. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking, and please sign in. Speaking in opposition.
Hi, my name is Phil Perret. I live at 229 Lincoln Street, so just about 2 blocks north of the property in discussion. I moved there. I moved to the area in 2020 when I got a position at the university, and we rented for 6 months up on Princess. And every day my wife would leave the house. She would drive. It was pandemic, so she didn't leave that much. But every time she'd drive through New Chauncey neighborhood, through like a few streets to see if there were any houses available, because we really liked that neighborhood and we wanted to be able to, I wanted to be able to walk to work. We liked the parks, we liked the access to Happy Hollow, et cetera. So, oh, and for context, I'm also the one with the giant white loud polar bear that walks around the neighborhood. So yeah, that's me. And getting a house in that neighborhood is difficult. As the, I don't know what the word is, the proposer or whatever, noted, they were not even the first accepted offer. They got lucky and got the second because there was some work that needed to be done, which is great. It looks really nice. But I have friends and colleagues who want to get into our neighborhood and just can't move fast enough. Like, there's so much demand that it is just impossible. And there were several comments made in favor of the exemption, that there are no families in our neighborhood. This is just false. Like, they're all my friends' kids. Like, I have 4 kids, and I can name almost every kid in our neighborhood as a result, because they take the bus with my kids, they play at the park with my kids, they eat popsicles out of my backyard. So, like, there are houses that have families within 1 block radius of this property, and definitely tons of families within 2 or 3 blocks. And yeah, it's just, there are also multiple Airbnbs within a block or 2 of our house, and they don't add much value to our neighborhood. They don't help the school district. They don't make it any better. A lot of things have been said about students. In my opinion, students are what help make our neighborhood also interesting, because if there wasn't a student, there wouldn't be the university, and it would be a less interesting place. And so I have different opinions than most people. I'd rather them rent to students than do an Airbnb, personally, because we have students next to us. I'd rather it be a family, but they're nice and they're respectful, and And they're good kids who want to get a good education. But yeah, I think it's important to remember that like, this isn't going to add anything to our neighborhood. It's not going to help the school district. It's not, I mean, sure, I understand wanting to be able to walk to campus when you're in town for a few months, or which, who knows? They'll just get it approved and they don't have to be there for 3 or 4 months. As soon as it's approved, they can do whatever they want, right? As far as my understanding. So, yeah. One last thing, it says in this, the staff comments are quoting, I assume this is quoting something that was submitted by the people proposing the exception, that any noise in excess of 70 dB, I'm a professor in electrical and computer engineering, I assume this is supposed to be dB and it's supposed to be decibels, but like even that they didn't write the report, the request right, it's kind of a flag to me, and yeah, that would be my conclusion. I do not support this variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening. My name is Peter Goldsborough. I live at 156 Creighton Road in West Lafayette. I don't really have any particularly new points to address or to add, but if I don't speak, you don't know how I feel. So I feel compelled to stand up and let you know how I feel. I suspect there's a whole lot of other people sitting behind me who would rather not stand up. So anyway, I'm delighted that the staff has finally come to the realization that these are not good additions to a neighborhood and that they have some justification for recommending rejection of this petition. All of the comments about the negative impact of these transient houses on the neighborhoods are very, very valid. You've got people who live opposite these who've had to put up with a lot of issues for many years. There are plenty of Airbnbs already in the neighborhood, in the city and in the environment. We don't need to add any more. There's also lots of hotels, so there's plenty of opportunities for people to find the type of accommodation they want without adding another one. So there's really no justification that I can see for granting a special exception. There's no special reason to grant this. So I would urge you to vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
My name is Lonnie Kusick, and I'm at 807 Elmwood Drive, West Lafayette. I am, again, on the emotional side. We have a wonderful neighborhood. We moved there because of the neighborhood. And I do acknowledge and listen to what a great thing the Airbnbs are for people that want to come to Purdue and the people that want to come visit their kids. And I do agree, it works really well for them. I mean, and I think that's why there's such a market for people saying, oh, here's a really good opportunity because people want to come and stay in a nice house and stay together rather than the hotels. But we do have hotels, as Peter just said, there are other Airbnbs. And the purpose of the R1 is for single families. This summer, I guess it was during the band, the time that the West Lafayette Band travels through the neighborhood and plays for the different houses. And we all went out on the road and listened to them and clapped, and there was a family at this Airbnb, and I'm sure they enjoyed that. They thought this was really cool. Well, it's because we have a neighborhood that has things like that. And if we slowly take the neighborhood away, and everybody that wants to come to Purdue and just be close for visiting their kids or going to football games, we diminish and destroy the neighborhood that we have. So again, I do applaud the thought that this isn't a positive to our neighborhood, but it's a negative. So thank you for listening and hopefully deciding to decline. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition? Last call for speaking in opposition. If not, petitioner, you have a chance to rebut.
Thank you for the opportunity to rebut. First of all, I'm an ECE graduate of Purdue, and I'm embarrassed that I had the typo about the decibels there. I apologize for embarrassing one of our faculty members. I want to point out, first of all, the two immediate neighbors that actually own properties showed up in support, recognizing that there's a possibility, some random thing happens, there's a noise problem, but they showed up and demonstrated they were in favor of this. The staff report also, the difference between the recommendation this month and prior months from the staff recommendation was citations from the West Lafayette report. And the West Lafayette report was not very specific. I believe if all of you haven't read it, you should read it. I encourage you. On short-term rentals, there were a couple of different pieces that came out. One of them was a quote that says, "The feeling by some that investors in short-term rentals are taking away from the affordable housing." And as the mayor herself said, prices in West Lafayette are $585,000. The price of the home I purchased was $402,000. I'm not necessarily influencing that affordability piece. Moreover, there were other bidders. I have no idea what their intention was. I believe one of them was intending to own or occupy, but did not want to spend the additional money required to repair the home. So I worry that some of the short-term rental references that are being pulled from the West Lafayette report are being cherry-picked because they support what appears to be a fairly minority consensus, and that's a minority position that's being presented here. It's not, I think probably each one of you here has seen every one of these people in opposition one or more times, because I'm aware that they have actually presented multiple times. Zach presented the results of the petition. It's actually the lowest opposition report that he's presented to the board in the last 5 or 6 months. And so on top of it, while there's 127 in opposition, we don't really have any idea about the other 15,000 homeowners in the area, much less 4,000 house owners in the area. I'm not going to imply that it's 100% the other direction, but we are getting a specific position represented in that. In addition, the board here has only approved 5 of these in West Lafayette since 2018, and that's data that I actually received from John here. The total number in West Lafayette is 58. I got that from Chad Spitznagel, 42 of which are actual houses. There's 182 in the 47906 domain. So the impact of my getting this approved is fairly small. Also in that report, it said that short-term rentals do not impact the ability of homeownership or owner occupancy. They are typically impacting only long-term rentals, and so we have to decide what do we want there. I know there was a lot of positions here tonight that said that they didn't even want long-term rentals, which of course impacts also the ability for the schools. The school challenge, that's a challenge anytime there's an evolving demographic. My wife's family lived in a neighborhood that kind of cycled through where very, very challenging to fill the high school, and it cycled through when the retirees decided to move out, then we had other people move back in. That's the situation. I mean, the school problem isn't going to be solved by us owning the house because, like I mentioned, all of our kids are gone, so we're going to be yet another retirement age-ish type group that's not going to be sending our kids to the school. So traffic and transportation, somewhat orthogonal to this. There's a lot of problems on Robinson Drive, I think, that probably should be addressed by the City Council of West Lafayette and by the mayor. With the cars passing by, that's, I think, an orthogonal thing to what I'm trying to do, what a long-term rental would do, and even what a homeowner would do there. Mr. Taylor mentioned about the rentals getting spiffed up. That may be, I don't know that I've observed that actually being consistent. I'm seeing sometimes where there's a rental being turned over and immediately the leases are turned over. So that's not a consistent trend, although I believe we have spiffed up the property. One of the other pieces is that in the area that I've lived in between when I went to Purdue and between when I'm talking to you now. Actually, my wife and I have lived in the house since March. We had to go away for a week for my daughter to graduate college, but we're back now. So we actually have been living in the house and intend to continue to live there. One of the things that we've seen in Austin, is it's grown from 400,000 people to 2 million people. And there's a reason for that, and it's because it's desirable to live there. And that's the other piece about West Lafayette. It's desirable to live there, so we need to figure out ways in the zoning that we can encourage people to want to live here. And does my doing this encourage or discourage? I can't tell you that, although the ability to purchase a house in this area did encourage me to live here for as long as I've lived here now and to come back. But addressing the 58 and/or 42, however you want to look at it, short-term rentals that exist right now in West Lafayette doesn't get anywhere close to addressing the either 4,000, 5,000, or 6,000 number of houses that West Lafayette is short, and the tens of thousands, to cite the mayor, that we're missing in all of Tippecanoe County. So immediately throwing those 58 on the market tomorrow, that's less than 5 months worth of inventory using the numbers that we've been presented today. So it's a drop in the bucket. One final thing I'd like to point out is there's a reference in one of the cited articles that the West Lafayette put together that came from, it was cited through the Harvard Business Review that the Harvard Business School did. It actually cited that a 1% increase in short-term rentals in an area increases the rental prices by far less than 1% and the price of housing by far less than 1%. And again, that was using their broad data. So again, from everybody here, myself included, there's a combination of emotion, there's a combination of passion, and a combination of data. And so I would plead to the board that you not take the recommendation of the committee, of Nathan and John, because I think they were cherry picking and not using the data, and it's actually following a sentiment that seems to be supported by, I think, a small subset of the community. That said, I hope I can continue to have a good relationships with the folks in the community. I've had very pleasant talks with both Zachary and Rich, and I hope that we can continue to have that. So, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Comments, questions from the board?
I have a couple
Go ahead,
of
Rabita.
questions. And it's related to the commitment regarding quiet hours, which states 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. And I am curious about the enforcement of that particular piece. So I would like to chat with the city staff. Thank you. Yes, about that.
Chad Spitznagel, Building Commissioner.
58 properties.
59.
59. I'm putting you on the spot, but do you have any idea what kind of calls do people receive regarding disruption on these properties?
It's a good question because all of it goes through the police department. A lot of it's after hours. I mean, if we get calls, it's mainly, 8 to 5 on the weekdays where myself and NRT will stop out and we'll do more occupancy checks than noise. But a lot of that data would have to come from the PD. I'd be happy to look into some of that.
Okay.
One note on the 70 dBAs. I think the zoning ordinance doesn't touch anything on residential noise. It's all commercial, and the highest you can do with an industrial or commercial is 45 dBAs around a residential zone. So I guess I would also suggest in future that it would be 45 instead of 70.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we've got a ballot.
There were 7 ballots cast. There are 3 yes votes and 4 no votes.
Special exception is denied, and we'll hear the next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2154, Casa Boiler LLC. Petitioner and owners requesting a special exception to allow a transient guest house operating 24 hours per day, 7 days per week, for a maximum of 8 guests in an R1 zone. The property is located at 920 Carrollton Boulevard in West Lafayette, Wabash 18, Northwest 23-4, with conditions and commitments.
Second.
Have a motion, a second, and we'll hear from staff. Amanda, please.
Thank you. Amanda Esposito, APC staff. This is also in West Lafayette on Carrollton Boulevard. It's in an R1 zone surrounded by all other R1 zoning districts. This is a ranch-style house with a 2-car detached garage and a paved driveway, the width of a single car. There's no public sidewalk along this public frontage here. The house has 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Though it does have the detached 2-car garage, the petition indicates that that space would be converted, or it's planned to be converted, to a 4-season room. The driveway has space for at least 3 parked cars. So if approved, this petition would allow up to 8 guests at the house at a single time for fewer than 30 days in a row. It could also be used as a standard rental without approval. They will be limited to 10 guests at a time, and quiet hours are to be enforced by 9:30 p.m. on weekdays and 10 p.m. on weekends. A couple of other pictures here of the house. Okay, other proposed renovations of the site are besides converting that existing garage to a 4-season room, adding a concrete patio to the rear of that 4-season room, a fire pit in the backyard, new deck off of the covered patio in the back of the house, a new privacy fence along the north rear of the property, and covering the existing front porch. Like the previous case, this request is within West Lafayette city limits, so I won't repeat all of the staff comments regarding the housing study, but while this request meets most of those ballot items that we have to use from the ordinance, staff feels that granting this special exception will subvert the general purposes served by the ordinance, so therefore we are recommending denial of this special exception, but if approved, the condition and commitments in the staff report shall be met. So staff is happy to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you. Petitioner, his or her representative.
Members of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for the staff of the area, especially John Burns, who's been very helpful, and Amanda. Thank you. My name is Kathy Kavanaugh, and I'm seeking a special exception for a short-term rental at 920 Carrollton Boulevard. I understand that this committee exists to listen to each petition and consider the specific details on a case-by-case basis, as well as those most affected. I appreciate that a process exists that looks at the factors such as who owns the property, who will manage it, and the opinions of the residents in direct proximity. Thank you for allowing me to present this evening and for your thoughtful deliberation on the specifics of my application. Currently, my family and I live next door, directly west of the property in question, and we share a driveway. From my kitchen window, I have a perfect view into the backyard. My motivation for purchasing 920 Carrollton was to have a place suitable for my husband's parents to live. When living independently becomes a challenge for them, I would like to be able to provide a place for them. Currently, they are in their 80s and in good health. However, it's impossible to predict when an acute situation could arise. It should be noted that 920 Carrollton was not for sale. I pursued the opportunity by contacting the owner for over 8 months. It was held by a large property management company. Due to the current market and it being a cash-flowing student rental for at least the last 7 years, the owner was not motivated to sell it, and therefore we had to make her an appealing offer. As a result of being occupied by undergraduate students, the property needs significant repairs and upgrades. I'm seeking this exemption to make good use of this property until the time comes that my husband's parents could need it. Rather than allowing it to sit empty and unused, as many houses in our area do, I would like to offer it for short-term use and offset some of the expense of renovation. As a resident of this community, I too was concerned about the growing number of short-term rentals, as I have heard that they are having a great impact on reducing the number of homes available to families. However, after reviewing the West Lafayette Housing Analysis Report published in April, I'm actually less concerned about the impact of short-term rentals. From the information on page 14, I have calculated that short-term rentals make up only 0.82% of the existing 5,100 homes in West Lafayette, which is less than 1%. Adding the 2 new short-term rentals that were added in the fall of 2023, and if you pass mine this evening, that brings us to a total of 45, which is 0.88%. On page 3, the report states that there is a feeling by some that investors in short-term rental conversions are taking affordable units away from the families. That is just one of 25 bullet points outlining the causes of the housing shortage, and the only one that relates to short-term rentals. There are certainly many feelings. We've heard them for months and months, and there's a lot of emotion around this issue, but I suggest that we stick to the facts when making this decision. Here are a few more facts from the report. In 2022, 10.4% of total housing units were vacant, meaning they were owned but not occupied or rented. This is out of the housing report. 16.5% of units are occupied by people over the age of 65, and 19% of the units have people under the age of 18 living in them. I reviewed the letter of opposition sent in response to my petition. One stated that denying transient rentals should in time lead to a decrease in housing costs. This was based on data from a study done in Irvine, Orange County, California. The data used was from 2018, prior to the pandemic, and the Irvine population is over 300,000, which is 7 times the population of West Lafayette. Short-term rentals in Irvine make up almost 5% of the housing in Irvine, compared to our less than 1%. I think it's fair to say that the impact of short-term rentals in Irvine before the pandemic is not comparable to West Lafayette today. With that said, if we had not been aggressive about buying 920 Carrollton, it would have continued as student housing for years. The previous owner stated to me that if I decided not to purchase it, she had an investor waiting in the wings who was ready to do so. In its current condition, it would be very unlikely that a family would rent it at the price point that it commands. Our block has been successful in reducing the number of rentals from 7 down to just 1. Before I decided to pursue the special exception, I wanted to ensure that my neighbors were not in opposition. Therefore, I met with over 14 of my neighbors that live in closest proximity to 920 Carrollton, and I was surprised to find tremendous support. They all felt that the current and previous occupants at times have been disruptive. You will see in my application that there were 11 letters of support from the houses closest to 920. Many expressed gratitude to our family for undertaking the improvement of this property and have asked if there would be an opportunity for their friends and family to rent the house while they visit. I will manage this property personally. Living next door, I will be able to ensure that the rental guests are respectable to our neighbors. I will not allow more than 8 guests at a time, and gatherings must be limited to 10 people and adhere to quiet hours. It is a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, as Amanda already delineated, and the bedrooms are all good size. Because the home is inhabited by undergraduate students currently, they each have a vehicle, 4 vehicles total. At least 3 are routinely parked on the street in front of the house. I think this picture was not taken, I think they've gone home for the summer, but during the school year, there are at least 3, sometimes parked the wrong direction, which I know sometimes bothers our neighbors. The driveway is over 75 feet long, and it can hold 3 cars, and we are going to ask our guests that they make use of the driveway before using the street. I will only accept 1 booking at a time and will not accept direct bookings. This property already has a rental permit through the City of West Lafayette. It was transferred to me upon ownership, and it will undergo a new inspection to renew in August. The exception will be non-transferable and therefore may not be passed to a new owner should I ever sell the property. Carrollton Street is our home, and we love our neighbors. Having an aesthetically pleasing short-term rental next door will have a positive impact for those living around it. I appreciate the board taking the time to review my petition and consider the specifics of my request. I know there is opposition, but I kindly ask the board to await the support from those living closest to 920 Carrollton. Please take note that the 3 letters of opposition that were submitted all came from people who live over a mile away in a different neighborhood altogether. I also don't endorse unbounded increases in short-term rentals, especially those owned by investment corporations or people who do not live in our community. I respect the case-by-case process, and I hope that you will continue to consider each petition individually. If I may reiterate the most important points, this was not a home on the market that we took away from a family. If we did not purchase it, it would have been marketed to students last October, and they would have an August 1st lease date. This will not be a party house, as we will be next door and able to closely monitor it, as we did closely monitor the parties that were happening while we lived there with the students, but I'll let my neighbors share more about that. The support of the surrounding neighbors was paramount in our decision to move forward with this petition. I said to my husband, if the people across the street and the people directly next door are not in favor, I'm not even going to consider it. The housing shortage in West Lafayette is cause for concern. However, this is not a new issue. I did a quick research this morning and found 2 articles, one from 1976 and one from 1980, lamenting the housing shortage due to the growth of Purdue. It's clear that this issue is decades old. The 47 short-term rentals that are currently are having a negligible effect on this huge deficit. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition?
I have some handouts for him. I didn't know how to. I only have 5 copies. I didn't know, so you'll be looking at it. My name is Rick Royce. I live across the street. If you're looking at the house, I would be on the other side of the street, on the right side. What can I say? You know, as long as we're starting with how long have I been here, we moved here. I originally graduated from Purdue in '76. My wife's family has been farming in the county for about 200 years. We've looked out at this. It's been a college house, you know, students there. In fact, you know, I kind of go back and forth. When you, the pages are the same if you want to just keep passing them. Okay, they're pictures that I took. Okay, the first one is you're looking down. It would be on the east side if you're looking down at the access window. The access window is an area that you can have a basement bedroom, and it's required by county code. But if you notice in the picture, it's got about between 12 inches and 15 inches of leaves packed in on the outside. So you really can't open up the window if you need to get the people out. I went over there, I had written letters to the people that own the house, you know, that this needs to be corrected. I never heard anything. If you flip the page over, if you look at that big red tree up there in the picture, that one, for a few years, we had the college students, and what they'd love to do is climb up the tree. Well, when you climb up the tree, then you jump on the roof. I was a college student here. I know what you're going to do. You're going to get beer up there, and you're going to sit up there and drink beer. Well, it got to the point that I want to call the cops. But how do you say, cops, come out there? Because the kids across the street are drinking beer on the roof. He would laugh at me if I gave that kind of a call. But, you know, it's just looking at it. And then we also have at the top of that page, they sent a guy through, and you really can't see it. It's on the east side of the house looking back in, and I had to put a little square shape. And if you drive by the house and go up and look at it, the tree actually has a square cutout in the middle of the tree at about eye length, eye height. And, you know, you look at that and you just say, what were they doing? You know, are they waiting for it to fall on the next door neighbor, my neighbor? You know, because it was a rental house, I had no way to complain. I see having people that own the house close by, I can voice my opinions on how to have it as a good house. I would love to do that. Please approve it.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition.
Hello, my name is Manuel Rivera. I'm faculty at the math department. I live next door. So that blue house on the right-hand side is my house. I live there with my family. We have 2 kids. One is 5 years old. The other one is a month old. The 5-year-old is in the school district. So I think it's important to consider the voices of us who have kids in the school district, okay? So we are very supportive of this special exception, and I think most of the homeowners that live around this property are in support as well. And I think there's a reason for that, right? In its current state, this house was not going to be rented by a family. Okay, the state was very bad, and we think the proposal of short-term rentals to cover the much-needed renovations and upgrades of this property is very reasonable. These short rentals, or these short-term guests, could be, as I suggested to Kathy, academics visiting Purdue faculty. This could be your own family members as well, who stay here. We trust Kathy and her family in managing this property. Something I would like to emphasize, as Rick already mentioned, is that communication with Kathy and her family has been very easy. And this was not the case with the previous owner or the students who lived there. Okay? We had multiple noise complaints. We ended up calling the police multiple times. And there was no improvement in subsequent rentals. Okay? So in conclusion, I think this would be an improvement to our neighborhood. And again, I would like to emphasize that it's important to consider the voices of us who have kids in the school district. Okay? That's my case.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition.
My name is Brendan Kavanaugh. I live at 924 Carrollton, which is the house to the left. And I live with a beautiful redhead and 2 little redheaded kids. Let's say we came to the community about 3 years ago, and to say I love West Lafayette would be an understatement. I'm a retired Little League coach. I coached almost all of the boys that are going into 7th grade. I'm a physician in the community, And I am a walking endorsement for why this community is so important. I recruit, one of my jobs, excuse me, is to recruit not only physicians, but nurse practitioners and physician assistants to this community. And one of the things that we're running into is a massive shortage. And we are having to use many, many locums physicians, locums nurse practitioners, locums nurses, particularly in the cath lab where I work, where we're working on people in the middle of the night who have acute heart attacks. We do not have enough staff, and there's been times where we've actually had to close our cath lab because we could not find people to staff the lab. So here's what I hear from the folks that I interview. I would love to come and help be part of Arnett Hospital, and I'm at IU, but I'm tired of living in a hotel. I want to be in a place where I can have my backyard, where I can come and cover call, where I can be part of a community, where my family can come with me. I don't like living in a hotel. It makes me feel like I'm hired labor. And I think there's more to this, and I think it's important that, and I love West Lafayette even more, because when I hear the opposition to this, it makes me smile, because people are not attacking the character of the people coming up here. They're talking about an issue, and we can agree to disagree. But my parents will not live with us in our home. So in order for my parents to live with us, the only way they're going to do it is if we have a separate domain for them. And as you know, and I've taken care of a lot of people in their 80s, all it takes is one event for them to be healthy, and then all of a sudden they're crippled and need help. I want to be able, we have the resources to be able to offer them a place to stay, and I think anybody who had the resources would want to offer their parents a place to stay so we can help care for them. This is what we should do as families, and I love my neighbors, and again, I wouldn't have let my wife bring this to this committee if I thought any of them were in opposition to what we're doing. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Speaking in opposition?
Zachary Bale, 124 Connolly Street. Thank you again for this opportunity, and thank you to Kathy and her family's efforts of actually being proactive when pursuing this question before the neighbors. Again, though, the question before us tonight is not about the character of the petitioners or approving the special exception in regards to the UZO, and not any unenforceable intent, like living next to the property or having one's parents eventually move into it sometime in the future. While commendable, again, not the question for us tonight. So this particular petition, 125 in opposition, I'll read it into the record. We, the undersigned, are opposed to allowing a transient guest house at 920 Carrollton Boulevard in West Lafayette. We find the proposed special exception to deviate from existing zoning rules, and allowing a transient guest house at this location in West Lafayette will materially and permanently injure the other property and uses in the same zoning district and vicinity, along with subverting the R1 purposes of the Unified Zoning Ordinance. City Council followed the public's leadership recently and passed a resolution to amend the Unified Zoning Ordinance to ban transient guest houses in residential 1 zones in West Lafayette, and is waiting to be heard at the June APC meeting. The APC staff concurs with the public's position that the transient guest houses negatively impact neighborhoods, which is based on the data gathered by the city's housing report. Our special exception request to deny this, or our petition to request to deny this special exception, is supported by the community's expressed concerns regarding safety, traffic noise, lighting, and the current and future uses of R1 zone properties in the neighborhood. To prevent the erosion of our neighborhoods and maintain their integrity as long-term housing for individuals and families, voting against this special exception is reasonable and justified. So to summarize, so it's on the record for this particular one, some of what I said before, differences between before and now. We had the City Council approve that resolution unanimously. That'll ban them in R1 zones. And it was so popular that Tippecanoe and Lafayette also want to do it in their districts. The resolution is working its way through the APC process. It'll be at the June meeting. APC staff is in agreement, and they said what the public's been saying for months, and that's granting the special exception will subvert the general purposes served by the UZO. And then, again, while the character of the individuals with the petition are highly commendable in it being unique in terms of pursuing this particular special exception the way that they did, nothing precludes them from using the house to provide that type of housing. They just can't rent it for those particular terms. And so if they wanted to pursue and bring people in, they could navigate that without being a short-term rental. And then also looking at the impact of individual transient guest houses ignores the impact of future purchases in and around those particular areas. There's no guarantee that they will be residents near this home after the fact. But again, that's all speculation into the future. So again, the question before us tonight is this following the UZO? Is it good for that particular neighborhood, and does it subvert any of its purposes? The staff says that it does. And then I also look forward to some of the comments from the elected and appointed officials that are here this evening. So with that, I strongly urge you to oppose and deny this particular special exception. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Hi there, I'm still Rich Hogan, 825 Robinson Street. I wasn't going to speak again, but so many people are throwing around statistics and questioning. I hope that you read that short paper that I gave you defending the West Lafayette proposal. In it, I cite some excellent work by one of our professors, published in Real Estate Economics. I've spoken with him. There's no question among those of us who are actually qualified to analyze these data that there is a significant effect of limiting transient rentals. It tends to significantly reduce rents and, by extension, housing prices. That's what's in that paper. The larger paper by the professor does due diligence. There's no question in my mind, or his, that this does affect property values, or, I hate the word values, prices. Okay, so I hope we're not going to continue to argue about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Hello, Jennifer Van Sciver, Director of Development. Mayor Easter apologizes for having to move to another engagement this evening, but the sentiment hasn't changed. We're here not to protect a few of our neighbors in favor, our neighbors who are in favor, but our community as a whole for the benefit of our schools, our neighborhoods, and community well-being. We appreciate and support APC's recommendation to deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening again. Dave Kusick, 807 Elmwood Drive. In response to a lot of the comments, I'll just reiterate the impact this has on our schools, our school district. You certainly have the data and stuff in front of you that shows that there is a decline, a steady but slight decline in the student population in our school system. And that demographic report that was done really did not consider the impact of single-family homes going to transient homes. So that would increase the decline of our student body population. The second thing, I do live with an Airbnb across the street, and you can make phone calls to the police, and they do come. However, when they do come, they'll come and address the issue, but then you can tell from the body language from the police that they're not getting the right kind of instruction on how to deal with the renters. You can tell from the body language that they're sort of there placating the situation and saying, well, we really have to be here and do something. But that's more of a code enforcement and law enforcement, something internal. The issues you see with some of the rental houses in the neighborhood are code enforcement, strictly. Having somebody come to your home on the weekend doesn't happen from code enforcement. It has to be a police officer. And to be honest with you, they've got a lot more important things to do than come deal with a disturbance. For instance, the Airbnb across the street, they had a group in there this summer, and it was just loud in the backyard. I could hear it at my house, across the street. You know, I would think the noise level was above the 7 dB level, you know, if you want to look at that. I actually looked up to see what 70 dB was, so. So I would encourage you to go with a staff report. I think their criteria that they're looking at to evaluate whether to approve or deny these requests is more appropriate now than it ever has been. And it's looking at things that are critical to sustain our community. So I would encourage you guys to, again, decline this special request. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Cheryl Kirkpatrick, 801 Carrollton Boulevard, West Lafayette, Indiana, 47906. I could talk to you probably for about 45 minutes about this situation, but I'll start with Kathy Kavanaugh ringing the doorbell of my house a couple of weeks ago and introducing herself and saying what she wanted to do, and was trying to get the feel of the land with the neighbors of whether they supported her or not. Now, I've only been involved with local politics since last July, and I now have a good rule of thumb, and that is, do not believe anything you hear. It's all crap. Nobody tells the truth. That's for sure. So when I went out and introduced myself, I said, you need to understand point one. I am the self-appointed #1 person who is against Airbnbs. You want to start from that point? Well, that was okay. She didn't care. She started her litany about how they wanted this house for the parents of the father to come and stay there, and I'm thinking, is this in my lifetime? They're 82 and 80 years old, and they run around like 65-year-olds, and I'm just quoting her. But then again, if I were you, I wouldn't believe me. So I'm thinking, okay, they're 80 and 82. She wants to move them in here. When would that be? And how long would they be alive in the house? And then what would it be after they're gone? I mean, these are tissue paper arguments. Are you serious? I'm the person who had my parents up at Westminster and went there every 2 weeks out of every single month for 18 months to sleep on a cot in the living room of their 2-bedroom apartment to help my mother take care of my father in independent living. Don't talk to me about taking care of your parents. I know. I did it, and I wanted to. And they weren't going to come and live with me, not because I wouldn't have taken them, but they wouldn't want to. And who says these parents are going to want to? I don't know where they are in the world. Maybe they're going to say, are you kidding? You think we're going to move to Indiana with cold weather and snow? You got another thing coming. We want to stay in the Sun Belt. And the neighbors all agreeing to this? Well, why wouldn't you? My God, after you have found out how wild this house is for all of this time, I don't know who the previous owner was that sold this house, but curses and hexes on that owner. Whoever you are, you belong to the devil. You lived and you owned that property and you did nothing to do anything about it, and you tortured the neighbors. So then when she goes and says to Andrea Williams, and she goes to Amy Trout down the street, what do you think? Do you think they would agree to having her next door to the Airbnb over these renters? What kind of a choice is that? I mean, duh. But we're not considering that. I told her, honey, this is what you need to do. You say you want to fix up the property? Well, damn well and good. Fix it up and sell it to a single family with children. And the guy next door has 2 kids. He wants Airbnb people next door. This has 4 bedrooms. There could be 6 children. Doesn't he want anybody to play with his kids? Or ride bikes around the street or go to school with them? I mean, come on. And how many do we have to have? I don't care what the number is for Airbnbs. Don't they understand 1 is too many? We don't want 1. Is my time up, Eric? 30 seconds. 30 seconds. And then, after we stop the Airbnbs, we can go after the Airbnbs that already exist and try to get rid of them. And then after we do that, then we can go after all the rentals. Who in the world, in our city government in West Lafayette, allowed all of this stuff to go on while I was teaching school in Pittsburgh?
Cheryl?
Again?
Yeah. Speaking in opposition.
Tough act to follow.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Didn't know we had those neighbors.
If not, do you have a chance to rebut?
Thank you for the opportunity to rebut. Richard Hogan stated, he referenced 2 studies. He didn't say which one. I have 2 here from 2 Purdue professors. One was called Airbnb or Not to Airbnb. That one was done during pre-pandemic times, and that only looked at rental properties only, but we're talking about the cost of housing going down, including the prices going down. The second one was not about banning short-term rentals, but limiting them to a one-host, one-house policy. And cities that did that said, if you own an Airbnb, you can only own 1 in your community, and that you have to run it. And that was with a controlled trial, and this was to prove the effect of the one-host, one-house policy, and that dropped housing prices 3%. So I'm not sure, on a $300,000 house, we're talking about $9,000. I'm not minimizing the impact of that, but when you amortize that $9,000 over a mortgage, you're adding $50 to your mortgage. In terms of the school issues, I'd like to address what David Kusick brought up. The issues surrounding the schools are far more complex than simply housing. And it's not this arena that we should be discussing the school district issues. There are ways that other school districts, which is out of our purview, redrawing the district lines. We're landlocked in West Lafayette. That's a huge conversation. But when we have less than 1% of the housing represented by short-term rentals, this is not what's driving our lack of students. It's also very complicated when you talk about the number of students that aren't there, because how many of those students require special services? You may get more money from the federal government, but that would require more people in the school. So it's not a one-to-one correlation. If we magically return these 46 houses to the short term or to the market, how do we know that 46 families are going to buy them? We don't have any policies in place to prohibit investors or retirees or individuals without children to buy those homes. So if we're going to talk about limiting the use, then we should really consider exactly what we're talking about. Just walking distance from our house, there are 2 houses within walking distance that are sitting empty. So nobody's using them, nobody's living them, they're owned, but they're empty. And again, these are part of the 10.4% of vacant homes, and that's again from the housing study. In terms of addressing the party issue, if my neighbors are going to be disturbed by the party, it's going to be me first. And as Rick and Manuel pointed out, I've communicated with my neighbors. They all have my cell phone. I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't prepared to deal with the calls. What's interesting is, as the landlord of a student rental for the past few months, I've had zero ability to shut down their parties, short of what my neighbors could do. They could call the cops. As a short-term rental owner, I can put in a stiff deposit, which a lot of them do, and they say, okay, you're going to get this, put down this several $100 deposit. If you violate the party rules, you will not get your deposit back. I actually have an ability to shut the party down because I have an ability to fine them in a way that I could never fine the students next door. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board?
I have a question for Chad.
Go ahead, Brad.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. So my question is, there could be up to 8 people staying in this residence. Chances are there's not going to be 8 vehicles in front of this home. But does the city have, this is similar to the noise ordinance or the noise problems, does the city get complaints that may not come to the police about the number of vehicles, and does the city have maybe a number of vehicles that are allowed on the street or that you prefer to have or not prefer to have on the street?
Good question. Anytime you're registered in the rental housing program, you're constrained to a family plus 2 unrelated or 3 unrelated people. So the eight isn't just 8 unrelated people, it's a family, including, some two unrelated people to get to that max of 8. So no matter what, they're still working through an occupancy affidavit every time, supposed to be, every time that they rent it, that's sent to our office. Again, family plus 2 unrelated or 3 unrelated people. So 5 or 8 college buddies can't just roll up and get into the house. Those are the situations when they're not monitoring them, and there are 8 vehicles of 8 buddies that show up. That's when we usually get the main calls on that. So those would be the main enforcement issues on the 8 vehicles. But in regards to that, it's usually just the 2 off-street parking spaces that would be required.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chad, if you could remain on the podium there. In your experience, what has been your enforcement experience? How much taxing has it been, especially looking at this 59 properties that we're talking about?
Again, I think in 2017, when we the city, decided not to enroll in the transient guest housing stuff, the issue then wasn't our schools. The effect wasn't, the 59 units wasn't on the schools. I think that's the biggest shift over this period of time is it's not necessarily the enforcement of noise and parties that we already have a little bit of that with the rental program. The effect, again, is what's happening to the school corporation. What's the long-term effect with occupancy of availability for a single-family houses. So that's the shift that we're trying to encapsulate now.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Chad, one more question. We keep hearing numbers thrown out about vacancies of single-family houses. Can you elaborate on that? I mean, do we really have that many vacancies?
That's a good question too, because I signed every time we do a rental registration and somebody goes through it, I look at and I'm checking, occupancy affidavits and such. And there are a handful that are, hey, the house is vacant. So that's not something that we track on our extensive spreadsheet, but it is something that I would like to know too. I think there are some in that short-term rental that they're saying it's not occupied, but there are some other full-term rentals that are unoccupied too. But that could just be their preference, waiting for a family member coming into town or something too.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Robert.
I have a question for the petitioner. The staff had stated that they recommend denial, but if it is approved, they would like a commitment that there should only be 8 guests with 3 unrelated. Your commitment was going to be 10 guests, and they would have to be 3 unrelated. I realize it's a 4-bedroom house, but 10 guests and potentially 10 people that you don't know. I mean, from what you're describing, you're going to be right there. But it could be 10 people you don't know, and 10 people you don't know who's going in and out. Why 10? Typically, people have been suggesting 6. 3 unrelated, a total of 6 per rental. Why 10?
It's actually 8, and then the 10 is just unregistered evening guests. So we would limit, like if somebody wanted to have a couple friends over, then that would be the 10. But the number of registered guests is limited at 8. And that was because it's a 4-bedroom house, and so we thought 2 occupants per bedroom. We're going to put some twin-size beds in there anticipating kids.
And Robert, maybe we can help to clarify here. The proposed commitment number 1, it's for events, 10 guests there.
Can I clarify, is that 10 additional, or is that a total of 10, including the 8?
I intended it to be a 10 total. It's really discouraging parties. You can have 2 friends over, that's it. So we don't really want to encourage more than that.
But then under your situation, you would allow potentially evening gatherings or parties outside of the home?
Well, only for a total of 10 people. So the 8 people staying in the home, up to the 8 people could invite 2 additional guests over.
But if you did have, let's say, 5 staying in the house, that would allow up to 5 guests then as well?
Correct, evening guests, within the quiet hours.
Thank you.
Maybe for staff and then petitioner, just to make sure I understand the commitments in petitioner's proposed commitments. So are the proposed commitments part of the petition? Even though it
Yes.
says- okay.
So the petitioner proposed commitments came straight from the petition application, not by suggestions of the APC as the standard commitments above that.
Okay, very good. Now for the owner, I think your case is made that you are the neighbor and you will be the manager of the property. What we've done in the past, even though this says this non-transferable, meaning if you sell the property, that Airbnb doesn't go with that. But I was wondering what you would think about a commitment that says that this special exception would cease to operate if you were no longer the neighbor or you were no longer the manager.
Oh, yeah, that would be fine. As long as we're not the neighbor, because I think that's the whole point, is that,
You're there, you're managing it, you're
yeah,
keeping an
it's
eye on it.
uncomfortable
have
if
some
you don't
other-
know, if you can't contact the person running it easily.
Right, okay. So I would propose an amendment to the commitments to include a special exception approval ceases to be valid if the owner is no longer the neighbor or the manager.
I'll second it.
I'll put that on the floor for discussion.
Any comments or questions about the proposed commitment? All those in favor, I mean, that commitment is okay with you, correct?
Yes.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries, so that is an additional commitment.
Okay.
then.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Gary?
No, I was just going to make a comment. I mean, we've
Go ahead.
heard a lot, we've heard these. I was surprised we've only approved, was it 5 we've only approved?
In West Lafayette?
Yeah, that's only 5 we approved, so it's not very many, but it seems like this is a student rental. It'll probably either continue to be a student rental or an Airbnb, and really won't affect West Lafayette school population. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? If not, we've got a ballot.
We have 7 ballots cast, 4 yes, 3 no.
That special exception is granted, and we'll hear the next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2155, Demetrius Patakis. Petitioner, with consent of owner, is requesting a variance to decrease the eastern rear setback from the required 20 feet to 10 feet to construct a new single-family dwelling in an R1U zone. The property, Lot 7 of the Matheson addition, is located at 616 Robinson Street in West Lafayette, Wabash 17, Southwest 23-4.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I know we have some technical difficulties. If you want to.
Yes, I apologize. Our laptop that we're running the presentation on decided to do an update right in the middle of our meeting. So unfortunately, we don't have any visuals to share with everybody, but I believe the staff report has the site plan in it for reference. I do apologize.
Good old Microsoft. Go ahead.
Okay, let me try that again. I will try to describe some of the images that you have in front of you so the public can understand what we're talking about, and with some luck, it'll pop up here in a few minutes with some images. The request here is for a property at 616 Robinson. This is a fairly small property. It's about 45 feet wide and 100 feet deep, which is actually pretty typical of a lot of the lots in the neighborhood. Historically, this lot had been owned by the house to the north, the same owner, so it was kind of used as a side yard. It never had supported a home that we could find, at least back to the mid-60s. The proposal here is to build a new single-family home. The rear setback for this lot, which I'm hoping you'll see soon, is a 20-foot rear setback, and that's for the primary house, the building. However, detached structures are allowed to go closer to property lines. In fact, a garage could go as close as 10 feet to the rear lot line if it were detached. However, because petitioner is proposing a single-family home with an attached garage, and this is a 2-story house, 1,700 square feet, to be 10 feet from the rear property line instead of the 20. So, you know, if they would have been able to separate the garage from the house, they could have built the setback, but they're choosing to build something that's more convenient with the garage attached. Really what it came down to is we weren't able to find an ordinance-defined hardship. And as you guys know, we've adopted the stricter standard of ordinance-defined hardships as opposed to a practical difficulty. An ordinance-defined hardship is a little bit more difficult to prove. In this case, there would be a way to develop the lot without getting a variance. It may result in a slightly smaller house and a slightly different configuration, but it could be done, so staff was not able to support this variance.
We're almost there.
Oh. Yeah. Don't look at the computer.
I was going to ask, does anybody need to take a break?
Sure.
Okay. Well,
We'll take
5-minute break. If we can go ahead and reconvene, please. And John, I'll let you.
Okay. Well, let me go through some of these images. I've made most of the presentation, but I can say a little bit more. Here's the property on the east side of Robinson Street between DeHart and Oak Lane. And as I zoom in here, you'll see that's an empty lot here, and the house to the north once occupied both of these lots as their yard. And the site plan is right here. So on this drawing, there's a concrete slab drawn on the rear of this lot that is indicative of a structure that was once there a long time ago. It's been gone for a long time, but just the foundation remains. And I think that was done by the petitioner to illustrate that something was close to the rear property line at one time. What is proposed, though, is shown in more of a, I don't even know what color that is, purple? But it does show 11.18 is the setback for the driveway, but the requested setback, though, is the 10 feet instead of the 20 feet. There is a little bit of room to the south to expand, so they haven't completely filled up their footprint. And that's kind of why I made the argument about we couldn't find an ordinance to find hardship, because it would be possible to build something of a similar square footage but a different configuration to fit within the setbacks. The other thing that I should mention is that currently the lot to the north has no on-site parking. As part of this proposal to build the new house on the subject property, a driveway would go through the property to the north, right there. Along with that improvement of this driveway stretching to the new home site, 2 parking spaces would be created to take cars off the street for the existing house to the north. And I think the petitioner could probably describe it a little bit better than I did, but staff could not support the variance.
Thank you. Petitioner, his or her representative.
Good evening. Demetris Patoukas. I'm the petitioner. I cleared some of the room out. I won't take it personal, but so I'd like to kind of take a step back and talk about why we're requesting the variance and where we came from, where it came from. So we're longtime community members. We've owned the house here and the lot for many, many years. There's a few things that play with this. When I decided to take this project on, I was excited because there are a few infill opportunities within the city limits of West Lafayette to build a house, and to build a house in a community that really needs housing product. So we looked at it, and first, the first thing we looked at was loading it off of Robinson. Well, there's a lot of traffic on Robinson. There's other residents that have already brought up accidents that have happened on DeHart because of the traffic on Robinson. So we decided, we're in a position where we can load the house off of DeHart because we own the property to the north, and we can serve it with the same access point that exists today in the form of a curb cut on DeHart. Secondly, we looked at parking. There's parking, plenty of cars parking on street along DeHart there. Like John said, there is no off-street parking today for the house on Robinson. So we're going to fix that problem with this proposed plan. Now, back to the hardship or economic hardship. I agree there is no hardship that I can point out, but being a community member here, we want to build a house that fits in with the community. It's in the historic New Chauncey neighborhood. So to us, that meant the house fitting in size and scale. We could have built a bigger house on the lot. We chose not to. And we positioned the house the way we did because we decided to split the difference between the existing dwelling to the south and our house to the north, rather than slide it further south and eat up the side yards between the existing dwelling to the south and the north. Like John pointed out, there's a slab. There was previously a structure there that comes very close to the side yard or the backyard of the house to the east there. We didn't feel like putting a separate structure there was appropriate for the neighbors. So we opted for this configuration of an attached garage that would be side-loaded off of DeHart and conform with the neighborhood. I appreciate the consideration of the board and welcome any questions when the time comes.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the petition?
Hello. Again, my name is Colin Kankiri. I live in the existing dwelling south of the project. I would say I came up against, but I just want to get more information. I think it's okay that if there is going to be new housing added on, at least should it set in city standards. But I'm just worried that the houses both on the north and the south are going to be very close. I mean, this isn't a building that's grandfathered into West Lafayette, and it's not an existing structure. All I'm worried about is how close the density is going to be. I do appreciate that the car is going to have like a drive-through from the Deerhart Street, but it should be noted that there is already housing around the area, and possibly speaking to the minds of the public and the city, I think if it's going to be like for families that are going to move in, that should be fine. But for another student housing rental, the existing property up north is already pretty big. So just for consideration, I would like to also get information on the green space that's going to be provided. I know that if it's R1U housing, it should be 30% minimum green space in any plot. So if that's going to be provided, and they did say that they can build more, we appreciate that they didn't want to build more, but if all the standards are met, I don't think I would be against it. Just noticing that if it's too close to each house, it's going to be annoying for both the south and the north. So we suggest that, the board also considers that into account as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And if you could sign in, please.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Speaking in opposition? Last call for speaking in opposition. And petitioner, if you'd like to rebut.
So in terms of setbacks of side and front, they all conform with the existing ordinance. They either conform or exceed the minimum requirements in terms of green space and setbacks.
Okay. Thank you. Comments, questions from the board? Gary.
Maybe a quick question for staff. I think you said it, but I want to make sure. But if this garage that they're building was detached, they would not require a variance. They could be closer to the alley.
Correct. Accessory buildings could be built as close as 10 feet to the property line, if not closer.
Okay, thank you.
And is that an alley behind it? I take it or what?
No, are you talking about back here?
Yeah, behind the two lots, there
There
appears
you
to
go.
be two pieces. It looks like
It's not an alley, it's...
Okay.
Yeah, there are two small rectangles oriented north-south there that the mouse is over that were purchased by the property owner to the east.
Okay.
And that happened some time ago. I did look into that, but it was
But it's
60s, I think.
Same ownership as property
As
to
the
the
house
east.
to the west, correct.
Or
So
to
they're
the-
not part of this
Or
property.
to the west, okay, gotcha.
To the east, yes.
East. Disorient, okay. I understand what you're saying. Any other questions?
John, do you happen to know the width of that piece?
I think it's 10 feet.
Okay.
Probably what it looks like.
No, it's not part of their legal.
10 or 12 feet. While they're looking that up, does anyone have any other questions? Chad, does the city have any issues or concerns?
And Rabita, you were asking about the width of the small piece that's not part of this? Okay. I'm getting that answer for you.
Thank you.
Chad Spitznagel, Building Commissioner. No issues with the building placement on the new lot. I know he's worked through engineering and has worked through the maximum of the 25-foot curb cut and has agreed to that. So all issues are clear on our end.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's 10 feet wide.
So the difference between the proposed new building and whatever exists currently would be about 20 feet?
Correct.
If it's approved? Okay, thank you.
Like 21 feet.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we've got a ballot.
There were 7 ballots cast, 7 yes, 0 no.
Variance is granted, and we'll hear the next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2156, Mark and Carol Davison. Petitioners and owner, represented by Chris Shellman of Gutwein Law, are requesting a variance to decrease the floodplain boundary setback from the required 25 feet to 11.65 feet to construct a detached garage in an A zone. The property is located at 1040 North, 1275 West, in Tippecanoe 4, Northwest 24-3.
Second.
Motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff. Nathan, please.
Nathan McBurnett, APC staff. We're up here on the north edge of the county. We've got a tract that's predominantly floodplain with a bit of agricultural zoning as well. This particular property was created through parcelization process in 2001. It's improved by a house with a 3-car garage that was built in 2002. The petitioners are requesting a reduction in the required 25-foot setback to 11.65 feet. Let's see, we've got a site, there's the existing house. The site plan here shows that the foundation for the proposed detached garage is already in the ground. So when additional surveying information was submitted to verify the elevation of the structure, it was determined that while the foundation was laid at the flood protection grade, which is 2 feet above the regulatory flood level, it was too close to the floodplain to meet the setback. So with that in mind, staff's recommendation, just focusing on 2 of the tests here, test number 4, The terms of the zoning ordinance are being applied in a situation that is common to other properties in the same zoning district. This setback applies to all properties adjacent to the property in question, all single-family homes. And construction on the structure was begun based on an inaccurate site plan. The petitioner unfortunately took the risk waiting to get a surveyor on the site until after the structure was in the ground. If the surveyor had staked the property prior to construction, this setback issue would have been identified before construction. And then strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will not result in an unusual or unnecessary hardship as defined by the ordinance. It's certainly not practical to destroy the foundation and move somewhere else, but there is ample space available to locate the structure outside of the required floodplain setback. The hardship involved is self-imposed. The petitioner laid the foundation prior to getting the survey, and there was ample room elsewhere to replace the structure. So with this in mind, staff's recommendation is denial. Thanks.
Thank you. Petitioner, is there a representative?
Yes, good evening. Chris Shellman of Gutwein Law, 250 Main Street, here on behalf of Mark and Carol Davison. Thanks to the staff for their work on this, and we want to provide a little bit of background of how we got here. The Davisons hired a builder that reached out initially to the county surveyor's office to talk about the floodplain requirements and building outside of that. Their goal was to build a structure to house their recreational vehicle. In doing that, they sent the plans, talked to the surveyor, got approval from the surveyor. It was the builder's understanding that the property needed to be 2 feet above the base flood elevation. Plans for that were drawn up, they were submitted, and a building permit was received from the building commissioner. After the building permit was received, there was an inspection which approved the footers. After the inspection approved the locations of the footers that were staked by the surveyor, foundations were poured and the stem walls were poured. And when they went to go get approval to go vertical, the building commissioner requested an elevation, a certificate of elevation, to demonstrate that the floor of the structure is in fact 2 feet above the base flood plain. The structure is over 4 feet above the base flood plain elevation, and it was at that time it was determined that the distance, the horizontal distance from the floodplain, not the actual elevation, was less than 25 feet from the base flood elevation. So the Davisons were then presented with the possibility, the area's been since studied, the floodplain has been revised. However, we don't have a specific DNR elevation for that area. To request that probably takes 6 months to get, come back, delineate, see where it goes. In lieu of that, the other option, as staff suggested, would be to delineate the actual floodplain, then engineer a fill of the floodplain, provide compensatory storage elsewhere on the site to create that horizontal distance. Ultimately, what we would submit here is to fix this specific unfortunate error and permit the building to go forward with the 2 key criteria here, that the building is in fact not in jeopardy of being within the floodplain. It is over 4 feet above the floodplain, and we're just talking about a horizontal distance which doesn't technically impact the risk of the structure. We'd be happy to answer any specific questions, but ultimately this is an unfortunate error that wasn't discovered till after construction was commenced with a building permit, and now we're just trying to pick up the pieces and move in the best way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition? Questions from the board?
I have one. I didn't quite follow. So you said that there will be a you said something about addressing the floodplain. There will be
It is over 4 feet above the
It
floodplain.
is, so it doesn't need to be addressed?
Correct.
Is what you're saying? Okay,
To
thank you very much.
to increase the horizontal distance, that's where we would need to go forward and actually fill the floodplain, to take it out of the floodplain, to create a 25-foot horizontal
Okay,
distance.
I follow you now. Thank
So we
you.
would propose not touching the floodplain and
Thank you
keeping the
very much for
structure.
clarification. I appreciate that.
Did I hear correctly that you are, there is a study that will be completed that's looking at the floodplain in that area, that you're trying to get part of it certified out? or
We
not?
won't delineate it at this point.
You won't? Okay. And I guess a question, how often does that, how far has that flooded that you know of, or that the petitioner knows of? How far up?
We moved in last summer, so.
You moved in last summer, so you don't know?
I will say that the new data that we received is a lower base flood elevation rather than higher.
So it's unlikely to flood, and it is above the floodplain.
Yes.
Any other questions? If not, we've got a ballot.
Seven ballots cast, 7 yes, 0 no.
Variance is granted, and we'll hear the next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2157 Oplat Land Trust. Petitioner and owner is requesting a special exception to allow a transient guest house operating 24 hours per day, 7 days per week, for a maximum of 4 guests in an A zone. The property is located at 3940 Lindbergh Road, a little over 1 mile west of West Lafayette city limits in Wabash 10, Southwest 23-5, with conditions and commitments.
Second.
Motion is second, and we'll hear from staff. Amanda, please.
Thank you. Amanda Esposito. So this is another transient guest house. This one happens to be located in an A zone, which is one of our 3 rural zoning districts here in the county. This is a historic property. This is the number 10 Grange Hall. In the past, it's been used as a schoolhouse in the church, but has been apparently vacant for over 10 years at least. This area has a lot of single-family dwellings and row crop production. There's a car repair shop in the GB zone that's across the county road. This petition, if approved, would allow up to 4 guests in the 980-square-foot 2-bed and 2-bath house at a single time for fewer than 30 days in a row or as a standard rental. The site plan, as you see here, is pretty simple. We've got the structure. There's a small deck off of the east end. The driveway can comfortably fit 3 or 4 cars in it. And I have a few pictures here to show some interior shots as well of the beds and bathrooms in the structure. Okay. Regarding the proposed ordinance that is going to be heard at the June APC meeting, this property is zoned A, so if that amendment is approved, it would have no impact on future special exception petitions in this particular zoning district. It would Special exceptions would still be allowed in the A zone. Other differences regarding this case and the others that we have heard this evening, this property is outside the boundaries of West Lafayette School District, as well as outside of West Lafayette city limits, and it's in the much larger TSC school district. Also, this building was never used residentially. Therefore, the community is not losing a residence, but getting a renovated historic building with a new use. So this met all of our findings for special exceptions, so we are recommending approval with the condition and commitments as stated in the staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Petitioner, is our representative?
Thanks, Amanda. I know you guys don't believe this, but I really don't like public speaking. So we acquired this property. It was always a gathering place, and we feel like it should be a gathering place again. It was vacant for 10 to 20 years. I think the last transient renters were raccoons. So we hope that we can get a little bit more money out of somebody than the raccoons. It started as a Grange school and a church, and it's really too small to be a home, but we thought we could squeeze in 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and make it perfect for a family or 2 couples to come when they're coming to Purdue to, go to ball games or graduation. My support left because this lasted so long, but George Bramer was here, and he is the guy that sold it to us, and it seems like the neighbors are in favor. So we just think we've restored it really cute. So that's all I have to say. Any questions?
We will see.
Okay.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition? Questions, comments from the board? I'd just like to say I think it's a great use for a historic building. We have a ballot.
Seven ballots cast, 7 yes, 0 no.
Special exception is granted.
We're going to have a little open house. You guys are all invited one at a time.
No parties.
And we'll hear the next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2158, Ascent Hospitality Management Company, LLC. Petitioner, with consent of the owner and represented by Ryan Munden of RTS Law Firm, is requesting a variance to increase the maximum building height to 59 feet instead of the allowed 35 feet for a new hotel in a GB zone. The property is located on the preliminarily approved lot at the inside corner of the bend created by Sackham Boulevard in Sagamore Commons Business Park in West Lafayette, Wabash 1, Southwest 23-5.
A second.
Motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please, Amanda.
Thank you, and I commend you, Robert, on that preliminarily approved lot. Oh yeah, that's a mouthful there. Okay, so we're in West Lafayette here, just behind the Culvers and Popeyes on Sagamore, where a third hotel is going to be located. Last month, we heard 2 cases just across the boulevard there for the sign variances. So again, this area is all GB. It's a commercial park. It's currently in development. This proposed lot, unlike the other two that we heard last month, is not final platted yet. They're asking for a height variance. The maximum here is 35 feet, and they want 59 feet. This would allow a four-story hotel with a typical elevator shaft extension. Presumably, the hotels across the street are also 4 stories and approximately the same height. The difference between this property and the other two sites is that the building setbacks on all 4 sides of those buildings are more than the requirements, and you get a little bit of a bump in your maximum height allowance when you exceed those setbacks. In this case, they don't, so they have to ask for this variance here. However, like I said, this has not yet been final platted, so the lines could be moved. They could also build a slightly smaller building footprint and get that bump in height without requiring a variance. So in this case, there's no unusual or necessary hardship because they could build what they're asking for by slightly altering either the plat or their building construction plans. So we are recommending denial of this, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Petitioner, his her representative.
Ryan Munden with RTS Law here on behalf of the petitioner. We concur with staff's report and recommendation with respect to ballot items 1 through 3. We obviously disagree with respect to numbers 4 and 5. Situation is not common because there are 80 feet of easements on the south side of the property. So there's a 50-foot drainage and electric easement, and then there is a 30-foot gas easement. But for those easements, we could move the building back and achieve the 59 feet that we're asking for now. But because those easements are there, we can't obviously achieve that setback, so that's why we're requesting the variance. And because of those easements, it's not a common situation. It will result in an unusual and unnecessary hardship because, as I said, but for those easements, we could achieve 59 feet. And as staff agrees in their report, safety and adverse impacts on the neighbors are not a concern with a 59-foot building closer to the road. Be important to note that the 2 hotels across the road are also owned by the petitioner. This 59-foot building will be slightly shorter than the 2 across the road by like 6 inches, so they're essentially the same height as what's across the road. With respect to altering the lot, it is preliminarily platted. However, the property to the east is under contract, so at this point there's really no option to expand the lot at all. And with respect to building a smaller building, it's not as simple as going to Fairfield Inns and saying we want to shrink the building. Since this is a franchise, there are prototypes, and flexibility with respect to what is built is not as easy as one would hope. But again, but for the 80 feet of easements, which on a 1.9 approximate acre lot, 80 feet of easements is a ton of easements. In fact, it covers nearly a third of the west frontage of this lot. So those easements just make use of this lot very, very difficult. But because of that, we believe that that's an unusual hardship and it's not self-imposed. Obviously, we'd love to vacate them if possible. So with that, we would request your approval and be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition? Chad, do you have any comments? Put you on the spot again.
He moves pretty fast.
He does.
Chad Spitznagel, Building Commissioner. The key is the fire department's good with the height. I think the height standard should be something that we look at. We're working on other transient world problems in the zoning world. So, but the height's good since it's a sprinkler building, so we're good.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from the board? And can I ask staff, is it only the small section on Satcham Boulevard, that's the issue that they would have to back it up against, or, which side of the building or direction would they have to move it?
Oh, they would have to move it to the south to meet the
So in
the
other words,
setback.
into the easement?
Into the easements, yeah.
So they're fine on the east and west, it's just the...
Correct. It's just that
That
front
north side.
setback, they're just meeting it.
There's not much building there either in that direction.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? We have a ballot.
There were 7 ballots cast, 6 yes, 1 no.
That variance passes.
I move to adjourn.
We're not there yet.
All right, then I'll wait.
I can overrule you on that one.
All right.
We have one Airbnb here.
Any administrative matters? No administrative matters? Unless any member has an objection, the chair will order the findings of each member casting a vote for the majority decision of the board to be the collective findings of the board in support of the decision of the board. Hearing none, it is so ordered. And now I'm ready for you, Robert.
What do I want to do? I move to adjourn.